pandemic has shaken the world, laid bare unwritten social contracts, exposed inequalities, disparities, challenged systems, structures, relationships, and brought to light the intimate nexus of interconnectedness, interdependency, and coexistence. I remember reading this quote by Sonia Rini Taylor, where she says, "We will not go back to normal. Normal never was. We're given the opportunity to stitch a new government, one that fits all of humanity and nature." So, the questions before us: what have we learned from the lockdown, especially in a multi dwelling setting and gated communities? There was a sudden imposition to protect and safeguard, and as a result, one had to adapt to many new protocols and processes. While for some, acceptance was easy, for many, it was hard to practice, tempers flared, friction was common. However, in the past few months, there has been an easing out, an acceptance, and an adoption, given that some practices will continue, like wearing masks, practice of physical distancing, and hand hygiene. But what next? How can our learning and new system and practices be more just and meaningful? How can we strategize, leverage, and build upon them? How can we sustain them? Through this panel discussion, we hope to reflect on the lessons learned during the lockdown and opportunities going forward to be more responsible, responsive, resilient, and inclusive. And I'm happy to introduce my panelist for the day. Ms. Isha Pant is an IAS officer of the 2011 batch. She was a judge, the best all rounder probationer of her batch, and received the Prime Minister's baton and Home Minister's revolver. And I must mention here, if you haven't watched it yet, do watch a TEDx talk on how police are becoming agents of change, both in uniform and outside, and helping them expand and evolve their identities, something which is still very relevant to what we're discussing today. My next panelist is Dr. Kunal Sharma, who serves as a section head and consultant oncopathologist at SRL Diagnostic Bangalore. He is a member of the COVID consultative group and an advisory to the government as in charge of COVID detection program. He has also been instrumental in many policies around COVID testing in Karnataka. And some of his noteworthy contributions have been mobile testing kiosks and the mobile fever clinics. My next participant, Odette Katrak, she's a soft skill trainer by profession and by passion, a sustainability change maker, writer, and the co-founder of Beautiful Bengaluru. And the other panelist is Dr. T. Kamla, who's a clinical consultant and president at Adarsh Rhythm Apartments. Welcome, all of you. We're now going to divide the panel into three segments. In the first, we will look at the best practices and lessons learned. In the second, we will define public health, safety, and social responsibility and what it means to you personally. And in the third segment, we look at the guiding principles and an action plan for the way forward. So let's start with the first segment, practices and lesson. We start with Dr. T. Kamla. Ma'am, I read your presentation on the efforts made by Adarsh Rhythm Apartments. And you did mention in the presentation that you were one of the first apartments in South Bangalore to start implementing processes and procedures as soon as the lockdown was announced.
Yes.
Can you briefly share with us the process, challenge, and lessons learned?
Yes. Shall I remove or can you hear me? Mask, is it okay?
If there's nobody in the room, then go ahead.
There are two people, but they are very far from me. No problem. I am a senior citizen, also a consulting physician, still practicing, including seeing COVID patients, but not in the ward. But going to the general practice, doing my diabetes and other endocrine practices. I will just present my this thing so that I can explain in a better way. Okay. Now I will be talking about what all we did during the COVID days, initial reactions and how we went ahead with that. Screen. Yeah. No. I want to see the reaction when to start.
Oh, you want to see them?
1 minute. Yeah.
Do you need to share the presentation with them?
They have it also, but I want them. Yes. Now I will be starting my presentation. Just a few slides. See, yeah. So you cannot see it. This is okay. So we will go with the introduction. News about the danger of COVID-19 came in the March 2020. So our lives in the first few months have been engulfed by COVID. We had to change our approach to daily living to resist the virus as well as live with the virus. So apartment communities, being the dense living environments, had to adopt many new protocols and processes to ensure resident and staff safety and also control the spread of the disease. How we managed in Adarsh Rhythm. A team comprising of MC members, manager and some volunteers, including practicing doctors who are in touch with the COVID situation at ground level, we all formed a task force and helped the MC managing committee to run the show. That we started in March itself. And a core group of 5 members are formed as a special group to take care of daily activities and supervision without any hindrance to the activities that we planned. Also, we made an emergency local contacts, which were always updated on daily basis, and it was informed to all the residents through mails on regular basis. And also, we made a list of resident doctors who are always available to us. We made a group with them and we took help from them for any medical emergency situation during this period. And what are the practical approaches? As Madam just now mentioned, we were one of the first few complexes in South Bangalore to start all important measures as required at that time, like starting temperature recording at the gate for any member entering, and also arranging special washing area at the entrance itself, advising all to wash their hands before they go into the apartment, and also arranging sanitizers for hand cleaning at various places. We also took the initiative because it is with the help of other doctors who are helping me. We were almost on par with the government regulations, and even before that also we were active in our apartment. We took the initiative of arranging a pulse oximeter even before advised by the government to record the pulse and also oxygen saturation of all and help identify happy hypoxia and took care of the emergency. We also made available pulse oximeters, digital thermometers, gloves, masks and PPE kits for residents whenever they need to go out during if they were positive or for any blood test, things like that. And how we implemented this? We followed all steps very closely, not by penalties, but by coaxing the residents, as Madam mentioned, because initially there was resistance from people. So we slowly coaxed them with daily mails, talks and video conferences and talking to neighbors, talking on the playground, anywhere like that. And we help each other to reduce the risk of getting the disease and suffer. And we always followed a middle path, thus making life comparatively easy and adjust with the new norms of life and learn to live with the minimal resources that were available at the time. Still, we have a few like 1 to 2% who don't think it is necessary to listen to volunteers and respect the guidelines for the sake of society. But they slowly, the tide is turning towards the good behavior, which is a good thing to learn. And we had our own problems. We had some 14 apartments which were affected. 2 deaths also. They were senior citizens with so many comorbidities, but all others survived well and they are all hale and healthy. They appreciate our efforts. So at this time, shall I stop?
Sure, if you can briefly, tell us the lessons learned.
The lessons were initially, as you have mentioned, there was always a kind of apprehension, fear, and our duty was to change that mental situation and make people understand what is the disease, how we can prevent or you can at least control to some extent, and how we can still live happily with whatever little resources we have. And that happens only when we can help with each other and have good coordination between the staff members, residents, and all those things. That was the main lesson. Next lesson is how to provide essential services to the residents and make them feel comfortable without suffering for daily life activities. Third was even allowing the children to play out, though the rules were telling don't allow the children or senior citizens, we took our own decision. with restricted mobility, various timings and various situations, to have some kind of mobility, to have a mental happiness and not restricted to inside their apartment, feel very secluded. These are the main three lessons we learned.
Thank you very much. I think the takeaway from what you mentioned is coordination, comfort, and the importance of mental health. Thank you very much. I think we'll move to our next panelist. And I would like to welcome Mr. Munish Mutkal, who's joined us. My second question, so we'll start with Dr. Kunal Sharma. As a person in charge of the COVID detection program, can you take us through some of your learnings and best practices? And if you can throw light from a gated community perspective. Dr. Sharma?
So, first of all, good afternoon to everybody. And it's nice to be a part of such an esteemed panel discussion. I haven't really prepared a speech or anything in particular, so I'll be just addressing the practical perspectives that I've learned, throughout this pandemic. The first thing that I realized was that this is something that we have never seen before. These were absolute unprecedented times, both as a doctor and as a citizen and an individual. So we were dealing with, something which was very contagious and something which was absolutely fatal. And the most important point that I would like to highlight to everybody is that even as doctors, we didn't exactly know what the disease was. So, there were a variety of organizations from CDC to WHO, which were coming up with different guidelines. And those guidelines were very dynamic. They kept changing every now and then. In the beginning of the pandemic, the first thing that I realized was that it was very essential to understand the magnitude of the disease that we are dealing with. And that essentially meant that we really had to test as much as possible, because unless we test, we did not know who is positive, who isn't, and everything would ensue after that. The second very important thing that we needed to understand was that before we have something which is preventive, that is a vaccine, which we still don't have in terms of masses, and before we actually realize what the disease biology is, it was imperative for us to contain ourselves and to be preventive. Public health at large means the science behind preventing a disease, prolonging life, and to make life better in general through organized efforts of the society, community, and even at the individual level. So it was very important that just like the disease was having a community transmission, the steps that were taken to mitigate the disease also needed a community transmission. So that is where, the guidelines of social distancing, of appropriate sanitization, washing of the hands, everything came into being. And we saw different kinds of people with their own definitions of what social distancing would be. Some would sit close and still wear a mask. Some would. So nobody was, aware of what we needed to do. Then we came up with proper definitions of 6 feet distancing, and having a sanitizer with at least 60% alcohol, washing your hands for a minimum 20 seconds, making sure that after sanitization your hands are dry. So those kind of nitty-gritties we addressed. From the policy making point of view, the first thing that I realized was that there were certain state surveillance policies in place which prevented a mass scale testing. So I wrote a letter to the Honorable Minister, and that is something that very seriously, and we got done away with these kind of rules, because it was very essential that everybody whom a doctor thinks that this is a potential person who could be carrying the disease, that person is tested. So then the IDSP protocols were scrapped, and that had an immediate impact of increasing the testing by about 40%. It's a sad state of affair, but at many parts of the world, we did have governments which did not want the numbers to be very high, because it was kind of reflective on the kind of governance, which was also not right. It's very easy to understand that in a country like India, which has such a high density of population, there will be more transmission of the disease. So it was definitely imperative that we test as many people as possible. From there, we did go on to make these testing kiosks. We went on to have community testing available for a lot of people. And from there, we came to community testing in terms of RWA, welfare associations as well. So there, a very important step was to make people understand that their lifestyle per se will have to change. They will not be able to go to their community shopping malls anymore. Everything was closed. So I saw a lot of people change to their local kirana vendors. There were a lot of changes inside the community, that maids were not allowed. People took to cleaning by themselves. There were the security people who got to cleaning lifts, and they were probably given some remunerations for that. And so you saw a collective effort from the entire community. And in case of a pandemic like this, we saw this spanning across countries and across continents. Another major development was also from the fact that there were community care centers which were established within the apartments, in case of need, because what we saw was that the disease burden was so high that BBMP was essentially taking some time before they could address patients who were positive. So there were times when there was a time when the reports were not informed to the patients. So we got that changed, because it's important for the patient to know that he's positive so that he doesn't spread the disease to people around. Then we started educational campaigns that people who test positive, they should they should be evaluated in the sense that if they don't have fever more than 99.5 degrees, and if they are essentially stable, then they could be managed at home. And the health centers were reserved for people who were not stable or who were high risk. High risk is any adult who had comorbidities in terms of chronic illnesses like kidney diseases, heart ailments, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, or immunosuppressive ailments. So these were the kind of triaging that we took in the community angle as well. And these community care centers were established within the communities, within the associations, so that if in case of any emergency, people could go and take refuge there. A lot of organizations like Portia Medical and others helped this cause a lot. Then from the government side, we came up with various platforms like COVID Raksha from Office of the Honorable MP Sri Tejasvi Surya from South Bangalore. In that, we got a lot of people, a lot of companies together, companies dealing with health like Fortis, then companies dealing with companies like Practo, and we tried to address even Swasth platform. So we tried to address things at a large, that people could know where they could go for testing at the earliest. The whole perspective changed. A lot of people took to positive steps in the community. It was a mandate that BBMP be informed of any positive case which comes, the neighbors be informed. There were a certain harsh steps like the sealing of houses and all which were taken, but eventually it was all meant for the betterment of the people. So all in all, I really feel that from the beginning of the pandemic to almost at the verge of having vaccines around us, we have really come together as a unit from all sectors of the society, and we have been able to battle this pandemic very well.
Okay, so I'm going to quickly take away that we have come together as a unit, and you also mentioned that there has been a collective effort from the community. So we move to the next panelist, Ms. Isha Pant. In July, I mean, the police department has gone beyond the call of duty and has been from the time of the lockdown campaigning across the streets, making people aware of COVID appropriate behaviors. In July 2020, you also spoke to Indigo about the social and civic responsibilities of citizens during the pandemic. Can you briefly highlight the same and also share with us what has changed, what continues to be relevant, especially from an apartment community perspective?
So to everybody, and I like the usage of the word COVIDian world. Firstly, I found it very interesting. So we have already started words relating to this pandemic. We are in a world which is being ruled by COVID, and I think it will continue for quite some time. Despite all the claims of things and all, I don't see that happening anytime soon. So yes, we are in a COVIDian world, and it will it is here to stay at least for some more time. So as you said, police department did take a lead, and when this pandemic entered the country, and in Bangalore, I can talk about Bangalore because I was in Bangalore City Police when this whole thing started and when the lockdown came into force, and how police was out on the street ensuring a proper implementation of lockdown, and which was why cases in Bangalore were very, very low initially. Although with when the unlockdown happened, then obviously the cases increased and there was a spike. But I think good work was done by the health department in Bangalore City, and also good implementation of mask enforcement happened. I think that was very, very important, because as you know, mask and good sanitization of hands and your whatever you wear, good sanitization practices are very important to ensure that the pandemic is curtailed and it doesn't spread as fast. So I think in these two things we did a very, very good job. And even now our BBMP marshals and our police personnel are out on the street every day. In fact, they are taking a huge risk, talking to people, stopping their vehicles and ensuring that mask enforcement is happening. And a lot of people are not really liking this strict enforcement, without realizing the fact that this enforcement is for their own good, or for the good of the larger good of the society. So mask enforcement is very, very important, and I think Bangalore is in general doing a good job because of the BBMP marshals and the police personnel who are out on the street day in and day out enforcing it. And the second thing is, I think, massive testing which was done by BBMP and the health department. So as Dr. Kunal also mentioned that, we have gone ahead and done a lot of testings, which again has helped to bring down the in Bangalore. So in terms of your question as to what has changed, I think, initially there was, after the lockdown ended, there was a period when people got very relaxed about things, and they were not taking these protocols very seriously, because during couple of initial weeks, maybe 3 to 4 weeks when the lockdown was there, people were genuinely scared. They were very scared and they were not moving out of their own will as well. But once the lockdown ended, people started coming out, and for various reasons, and I think people also felt a desire to come out of the lockdown. They were fed up of staying inside the house. So that's when people got very relaxed about things, and that's when the peak happened. And now I think with continuous awareness and all these mask enforcement and fine and penalty which is happening, people are I think getting more aware about this issue. And when I go out, I see better mask enforcement in Bengaluru city, and also in the apartments. Like, I also live in an apartment complex, so here also I see mask enforcement is pretty good. And in fact, now people have gotten used to wearing masks. Well, like, I can talk about myself. And in fact, my entire family, all of us, I think it has now become a part of our lives, wherein we cannot step out outside the house without our masks. So I think that is slowly coming into the lifestyle of the people, which is very, very important. Once it becomes a part of our lifestyle, enforcement, we do not require to enforce anymore. We do not require to penalize people anymore. So I slowly see this change happening, at least in Bengaluru city. So for the general public, I think this is a good change we are seeing, and that is one of the reasons why Bengaluru is now performing substantially well in terms of the number of COVID cases which have actually gone down.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Pant. My next question is to Mr. Mudgil. As the head of the COVID War Room and the Zonal Coordinator, Bangalore South BBMP Zone, can you take us through some of your learnings and best practices? And if you could also share light from a gated community perspective. I know this was meant to be a two-part question to both Dr. Sharma and to you, but I had to break it up because you joined in late. So over to you. Mr. Motkil? I think you're on mute. Yeah.
No, I had unmuted, but I couldn't hear your last sentence.
Okay, I need you to throw light, or you can share with us your learnings from the lockdown as the head of the COVID war room, and if you can take our listeners through, some of the best practices, challenges, and some of your learnings, while being in the thick of things, and also if you can throw light from a gated community perspective.
Okay, thank you. I'll try. Okay, see, I have been from virtually day one, been in the head of the state war room, and from mid-July, I've been here in BBMP as South Zone head for the COVID. So one very simple thing which we tend to somehow, lose sight of, I feel, the COVID is, the battle against COVID is won and lost at individual level. Okay, we think this is a community problem. It isn't so much. It is more controlled and lost, as I said, at the individual level. If this one particular thing we keep in mind, so it casts upon each of us immense responsibility. When I say the COVID battle is lost or won at the individual level, I mean it is won and lost at the conduct of the individual level. So, if in that I like to in fact give numbers. These are, just my guesstimates. If you always wear a mask as an individual, you are as much as even if you are roaming around, I'll not say inside a hospital or such an area, in general, wherever else you're roaming around, if you're wearing mask, 70 to 80% chances you'll not get COVID. I have got myself tested, maybe I have lost the count. Touch wood, not that, just I believe because I have been consciously wearing mask and having the correct sanitization behavior, I have not got COVID. Is the only reason is because of the precaution I have taken. And, I have even done the swab collection myself just to drive home the point that, it is not that dangerous as people tend to believe. In case we take the adequate precautions, like while taking out a swab of a person wearing a PPE kit, etc. So what I again want to reiterate, whether it is gated community or elsewhere, each individual, please understand, you are the hero or you're the villain of this whole show. Take immense responsibility in your personal conduct. And that, for example, is primarily for your own, good. Second, I would say the same thing extends then from individual to the individual's family. If these two things are absolutely correctly taken care of for their own well-being, the whole community at large would be, in a much, much better position. It's very, very simple. The COVID can only spread, as we know, from one infected individual to another individual by exchange of his droplets, or, something which is emitted by the infected person is inhaled by the healthy person. Now, mask is preventing that. Hand sanitization is preventing that. For some reason, we tend to lose sight of this simple fact. So I would like to reiterate this to everybody. And second thing, I would say the government role comes, I'll dare to say that, second, after the conduct of each individual, the government can play a role as a regulator, but as a, helping hand. People who become infected, we have to set in, and we have set in place, very good, to the extent possible, health and response infrastructure, IT systems to reach out to the people. So government does have a role. In that, as Isha was pointing out, I believe that the core reason why COVID spread in Bangalore after May, I call it after May, is because, as she said, when we opened up, people, large number came from outside Karnataka, and that triggered within Bangalore at that time, or within Karnataka, we were not cautious enough, which allowed things to build up from May to June. And then we had practically an explosion of cases in July. And then we started testing aggressively from July, I can tell that. And that has absolutely helped a lot. I would say one place where Bangalore stands out, where Karnataka stands out compared to the rest of the country, is the number of RT-PCR tests we have been able to do. There are some misconceptions. I'll just mention one or two of them. But in month of September or month of end of August and September, when Bangalore was having 4,500 daily cases, it was reported generally that the Bangalore is the worst affected, metropolitan city in the country at that time. I can, just to drive home the importance of testing, I'm trying to tell this number. At that time, Mumbai was doing around 10,000 tests. It was reporting 1,500 cases. Bangalore at that time in October was doing 50,000, and the month of September was doing 50,000 tests. And we were reporting 4,500 cases. And we got a lot of flack for larger number of cases. But I would say if had Mumbai done same number of tests as we were doing at that time, which is 50,000, they perhaps would have 7,500 cases. So what I mean to say is, testing is extremely critical. What we were seeing apparently a surge in Bangalore, more than the surge, it was the proper identification of the people who were getting infected. So government of Karnataka, BBMP has done an absolutely brilliant work, I would say, in terms of ensuring that the testing in Bangalore has remained around 40 to 50,000 every day. This is the reason core, I believe, that people who got infected got identified quickly, and which has led to the proper health and preventive action from the spread side. From the people also, once I get positively identified, my own conduct, my family's conduct will undergo a dramatic change. Compare this with another city, where a person doesn't get identified, he ends up infecting and becoming a super spreader. So the action of the government and BBMP to have a mass testing has helped absolutely. Going in future, I would say, though things are good, relatively speaking, at this point of time in Bangalore and Karnataka, battle is absolutely not over. The second wave is entirely possible. It gets triggered by some policy decisions, not because of the policy decisions, but because of the change in the way people interact with each other because of those policy decisions. For example, when unlock happened, there was a increase. Second, when generally we have a festival or some such thing, there tends to be a spike. Now, a major event, a decision which may happen, I believe, is in case the schools are opened, we need to watch that part very seriously. So right now, the government has not decided to open schools. That has ensured that the cases remain in control. And the second wave is also, we are trying to prevent, but we have to be prepared. At this point, I would say, again, at the cost of repetition, the most important part is individual behavior. It will decide whether we will have the second wave or not, and how big will be the second wave. If our individual behavior remains good, we are not going to have much of a second wave. However, in case our individual behavior deteriorates or so on, it will have a huge ramification in terms of the second wave. As head of War Room, I can tell you few numbers. These are complicated things, but I like to place it in as simple a word terms as possible to give you an idea why it is so critical, each individual's behavior. I'll put it in this way. The calculations show if one individual infects, 1.5 persons on average, okay, if one individual infects 1.5 persons on average in 14 days when he is infected, he ends up creating, let us say, 10,000 cases, such kind of a spread. If one individual who is positive infects 2 people on average, just see from 1.5, if the infection from 1 person becomes 2, we end up getting 2 lakh cases. If one individual infects 3 people on average in his infection period, we end up getting 22 lakh cases. That is how sensitive it is, how each individual is infecting. If each individual wears a mask, reduces even by a fraction the infection and the infectivity, the number of cases which get COVID fall exponentially. Now, because of this, what tends to happen, you see, suddenly there will be thousands of cases happening in Delhi or someplace, or even in Bangalore at that time, because that small behavioral change has an exponential effect. So I just want to, close not saying much, except that please keep on watching your individual behavior, keep on watching and ensuring that you wear mask, maintain social distance, and keep hand and face hygiene properly. This will be absolutely determining, the second wave happens or does not happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mudgil. I think both Ms. Pant and Mr. Mudgil highlighted the need for masks, and I must borrow from both of you. Mask is the new normal, according to Ms. Pant, and according to Mr. Mudgil, I think COVID battle is won or lost at the individual level. I think that's a very important takeaway. We move to our next panelist, which is Odette. Odette, we are actually running short of time, so we have about 15 minutes. So we'll finish with with the first segment quickly and then move on to the second segment. Odette, I know you have been championing during the lockdown. You launched the Stop India spitting campaign. You also sent a recommendation to the Prime Minister's office about spitting. And you've also been championing sustainable waste management, especially around the promotion of wearing reusable masks around the same time all this was happening. So how have you been able to engage the apartment communities, and why was it important?
Thanks, Pinky, and hello to all the viewers and fellow panelists. So I'll pick up from what Mr. Mudgil talked of the individual behavior. And I think largely as Beautiful Bengaluru, we work on changing mindsets of individuals, because collectively we believe that impacts everything that is good about a city. So if our focus is on waste or litter or cleaner public spaces, which is where the spitting campaign came in. So first of all, I think Doctor talked about, keeping oneself safe with individual behavior, wearing your mask. But I will add another angle. It's not only about keeping myself safe, because there are a lot of people who took care to wear their masks, but the added angle of irresponsible disposal was one factor that was largely worrying in those initial months, particularly as a lot of us work on the waste disposal angle. So I think there was initially not, when there were cases were somewhat, fewer, it was easier for BBMP to do specific pickups of COVID infected waste. And at that time, I think all cases went into hospital initially. So the hospital waste management was far more organized. But when it happened that, the cases started increasing, apartments had to evolve their own waste management. And I think a lot of guidance went out. But somebody wearing a disposable mask and then tossing it on a lawn, or even if they didn't litter it, it went into dry waste, which was also incorrect, because that could be infected. In turn, that was infecting the cleaners and the sorters. So we did a lot of campaigns, and we said that, in fact, I think Dr. Devi Shetty came out with this fantastic video, which helped the green thinkers a lot, saying if you don't need a disposable mask, if you're not a high risk, if you're not in the medical community, please do with the cloth mask. And I think all of us got used to, it became a fashion statement. You could match your mask rather than the plain blue one. That's on a lighter vein. But the point is, we realized the necessity of reducing the amount of waste we generate and making sure it's properly disposed, so that mask or glove or whatever it is, forget about littering on the streets. It should be perfectly disposed in the right way so that it's not generating waste or infecting more people. The second part of the campaign and the let's say movement that I have been very caught with is in all the, okay, let me start by telling you the first time I stepped out of home during the lockdown, there was almost some sort of, tremulous feeling of you're walking out into this almost like the sci-fi kind of thing. And there I was with my mask, and I go to the shop to buy a loaf of bread, and the shop guy had this hanky. It wasn't clean like mine. It was a filthy hanky. And then he gave me my vegetables and my bread. He walked to the front of the shop and he spat right then and there, and he came back with his hanky. And my eyes went open. And that's when I realized, oh my gosh, here we are doing all this 20 seconds, doctor, you said. We all were doing this 20 seconds. We're all wearing masks. We're all being very careful about the distancing. Of course, at that time, we weren't even going out. And here on this side is this fellow happily spitting. And the fact is, I think spitting has been such a habit for generations. Culturally, it has become acceptable, more because it is so disgusting that most of those who don't spit turn the other way. We did a survey, and out of 750 people across the country who took this, 55% said that they turn the other way when they see someone spitting. Anyway, coming back to the fact that we're talking about all three. So talking about apartment communities, people are reminding their staff about all of these three. Staff are wearing their sanitizers. But how many apartments are actually telling their staff not to spit? That's the irony, because people are following all these three. And unfortunately, even our government directives, any communication focuses on only these three, which are no doubt very necessary. But are they sufficient to keep away COVID? Because people on the road, they are wearing their masks, they lift it, they spit, and they put it back, simply because they don't get the link that spitting spreads COVID. And our entire Stop India Spitting campaign hinges on this one aspect of let's spread awareness that spitting spreads corona, spitting must stop. So that's one from the COVID spread angle. But the second angle, I think all the doctors will agree that even before COVID, spitting is why India is the TB champion of the world. And nobody cared that spitting spreads TB, and there were attempts to stop spitting, but I don't think they really got much teeth. But now things change, and COVID has presented the country with a unique opportunity, which we must take now or never to stop this habit. If we don't seize this opportunity and get our foot in the door, because now if you tell people that, you're wearing a mask, I just saw you spitting. Why are you wearing a mask? This is the conversation I have every day on the road. You're wearing a mask because you don't want COVID, right? Whether it's in Hindi or Kannada. They say, no, jora beda. I said, but you spat, but the COVID will go very fast. Their eyes go wide because they don't get this link. So to all apartments, what's very important is the first three, no doubt, but please add in this fourth point to all your building staff, not to say that residents don't spit. We've been hearing of cases where from the balcony residents spit, and then it's the cleaners who have to clean up. It's like having a room with 4 windows. You want to keep out mosquitoes, you've closed the 3 windows, 4th is open. Doctor, you agree? Mosquitoes will come in, it will never be, all the doctors are nodding. So my real sincere appeal to everyone is let's remember and pull back in this 4th point. Even if the government directives, I'm fighting to get them back in. I hope we get them back in. But apart from that, what can we do to engage? And there are 3 different ways we can. Isha ma'am, I'm going to show, I think Sandhya, if you can show, there are some amazing things which had come through the police. Every police station, Sandhya, would you be able to show those visuals? Every police station has big signs saying spitting spreads corona, no spitting please. We've changed the language. Initially we had said keep the virus away. There is I think a visual which has not only the 3 but spitting up there. This is from police, which was done I think at all the events or wherever in public places. This is the kind of focus, if we bring back, we would get people to start listening. They didn't care that spitting made walls dirty or that it was unhygienic, or even that it's punishable. It's punishable now after a petition to the Prime Minister, which I realized one day washing my hands at my kitchen and looking out and seeing a person spitting. It was on March 16th that, hey, nobody's talking about spitting. And since then, now we've launched the campaign. It's now a national movement, Stop India Spitting. So for BAF, we are specifically working, and to all the BAF apartments, you will get further details. There's a drive link I will share where we have compiled across the country, apart from beautiful Bengaluru's own videos, posters on this, some amazing ones, which I hope Sandhya will show us, which apartments are finding it useful to engage. We've even got a Mumbai knee surgeon, Dr. Nadkani from Lilavati Hospital, who in 2013 did a spoof on the Hindi song Jangli on spitting. So we're pulling in all interesting ways. We're trying to get wrapped because this is a subject everyone needs to talk about. No longer say it's disgusting, it's taboo. Because if we don't talk about it, we who don't spit, who's going to explain to the others? Sandhya, would you like to just show the pictures?
Yeah, okay. While we seeing the pictures, I think because we're really running out of time, I think we're out of time. I quickly would like to go into the second segment because what you have actually highlighted is leading into our second segment, which is about social responsibility. So when you think of public health and safety, the association comes to mind as government. When you think of social responsibility, the association immediately that comes to mind is corporates. So how does this apply to apartment communities or individuals? The very thing about gated communities is it can make one feel secure, safe, but it can also isolate, lead to apathy, or lead to disconnection. So in this context, now that Odette has mentioned, the role of Beautiful Bengaluru has been looking at changing mindsets. If you look at what Ms. Pant has spoken, what Mr. Mudgil and Dr. Sharma has spoken, all have actually talked about social responsibility in some fashion or the other. And so has Kamla ma'am. So in this context, I would like each one of you to quickly, in a minute, define what public health and social responsibility is. Where does it start? What are the practices that you've been following? And how can we make social responsibility personal? So if I can start, who'd like to start? Odette, maybe we can go backwards now. Maybe you can start and then quickly pass the baton around.
So if each of us thinks not just of ourselves and our families, but to me, it's very important we, what should I say, talk to the people from the lower socio-income group who aren't aware. They are wearing a mask. There are many of them wearing disposable masks for weeks on end. They wash it and they use it. Many of them wear masks. They're constantly touching it. So wearing a mask is one thing, the correct way to wear it. And we who are better educated than the lower income groups, I think the responsibility falls on us to explain to them. One of the simplest ways, therefore, for apartments is having a sign at the entrance. So maybe if Sandhya quickly runs through there are 6 or 7 pictures, a sign at the entrance so every person entering that apartment sees not these 3 things of mask distancing plus the spitting. And I think that would be a good way if each of us starts having conversations to encourage all around us, even if they don't know, to be aware of what will keep them safe. Sandhya, you'll just run through those remaining pictures. I think literally we need 5 seconds each. It can happen while others are speaking as well. Or you want me to do it? Should I do it? Do I have screen share? Yeah, I have screen share. Okay, so let me quickly do it. Yeah, this is the one which is from the police. You can see this one. It's not only got those 3. In fact, it's one of the rare ones I've seen which has all 4 because it completes it that all the 4 windows are closed. We have this sort of thing. This is a simple printout every apartment can put at the entrance. This is it. We have it in many languages. And we have a lot of interesting visuals. So we are now trying to spread it across premises. That's Bangalore Airport, vegetable shops, cart vendors. So that's it from me on the ways in which all apartments can get involved to spread all these 4 messages. Not only the first 3, but please henceforth add in the 4th of stop spitting. StopIndiaSpitting@gmail.com is how you can reach us if you want to be a part of this campaign.
Thank you so much, Odette. Ms. Pant, I would like you to come in next and say how would you, define, how would you make social responsibility more personal? And, the pandemic has definitely created opportunities for social solidarity. So how do we widen the circle going beyond our immediate apartments?
See, I agree with Odette when she said that, we need to spread awareness, which is right. A lot of people do not know how to wear the mask correctly still. So I think a lot of work has been done on it and is being done on that. And that is fine. But I think a very, very important issue is, in India, we have this mentality I think in general, we have this mentality that when the cat is away, the mice will play. So as long as enforcement is happening, as long as the marshals and the police personnel are out on the street enforcing, we ensure that we wear our masks. But at night, because I go out on night rounds and I go around and I see how the behavior of the youngsters, and not just the youngsters, but public in general. I do not want to put all the onus on the youngsters, but I want to tell you that, situation at night is pretty bad. And, all these restaurants and pubs which are open at night, most of the people are not wearing masks, and they are the ones who are aware. They are all educated, people working in some IT companies, doing very well for themselves, but still not wearing masks, not maintaining social distancing, and not caring about what are the repercussions of their actions. So it's very important that we, as I earlier said, that we need to internalize it, and we need to understand that our the actions that we take, or the decisions that we take, the consequences of those decisions or those actions are very, very far-fetched. And, we might accidentally infect, the Didi who comes to cook for us, or, or the person who comes to clean our house, and from that person, it may go to their family. So we need to understand the social responsibility and internalize these protocols. Despite the awareness, despite the government doing and the NGOs doing whatnot to spread the awareness, I still think there are a lot of people who tend to not follow these protocols for certain reasons. And it's important that we internalize it and understand the repercussions of our actions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Mudgil?
Yeah, thank you. I would want to mention two things. The social responsibility, to be very frank, I believe it stems from one taking care of one's own self by a simple understanding, basically law of karma, if I put it in one way, or, what goes around comes around. What I do onto others will ultimately affect me inevitably. This simple knowledge where I take care of my own behavior action, I believe is the core, I'm reiterating, of being the socially responsible person. Not for anybody else, to be very frank. This whole attitude, in fact, I don't subscribe to, that you be good for somebody else. And I don't even think it is needed. Particularly in COVID, you be good for your own self, because what you do will going to actually ultimately affect you and your family and somebody near you. It's not disconnected. And do it for yourself. Keep that in mind. And the society will get taken care by your good behavior for your own sake, one. Second, I saw some question about the second wave. I can mention it to you. We can talk a lot. If second wave comes, it will be because of our own wrong actions. If it is prevented, each Bengalorean should congratulate himself or herself for having prevented the second wave. That is the acid test of our social responsibility. And as I said, I'll just say concludingly that we don't do it for others. And let's not pretend to do it for others. With the knowledge, information, which may be spread about by government and other agencies, let each one of us do it for ourselves and do it properly. The society will automatically benefit, is my view.
Totally. Thank you so much, Mr. Mudgil. Dr. Kunal, over to you.
So there are two facets to this question. One facet is of public health and the other facet is of social responsibility. So it's very important to understand what is public health. I keep telling some of the younger doctors that the definition itself is so beautiful that it will encompass everything that boggles your mind. Public health is the science and the art of preventing disease, prolonging life, and improving the quality of life as a whole by organized efforts and informed consent of society, of organizations, both public and private, of community, and of individual. So if you understand each part of this definition, you would realize that it is not just the mere absence of infirmity or disease. It is a science of complete well-being. In terms of corona, as everybody has been saying, the catch line is you change and the world will change. We have people wearing the ear dangling way of wearing masks and all sorts of things. So it's very important to understand that it's just basic empathy. You have to follow the rules so that you are safe and people around you are safe also, because it is any missing link in the chain will actually cause havoc, as Mr. Mudgil has already given us the statistics of how contagious and exponential the disease transmission is. So I would just like to say that very basic steps of personal hygiene, hand sanitization, washing your hands properly for 20 seconds, making sure that after usage of sanitizers your hands are dry, wearing your masks properly, maintaining social distance at least 6 feet. You remember these things. Of course, cutting down, no spitting in public. I would even add no smoking, because even smoking is associated with a lot of contagious diseases. And if you just follow these bare minimum practices, I think things are pretty much on our way, and we will most likely avert the second wave from impacting us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karunaji. What about Kamlaji? Over to you.
Putting some points when we other panelists were discussing. One example is one of our colleagues, doctors who is a resident also, she is a specialist working in ICU. After she got COVID and recovered, she noted one important point. We may talk of percentage, we may think that we are safe, but a person losing a family member, for them it is 100% loss. So if we keep that in mind, then we will understand that the loss is not 1% for the government, but 100% for the family. That will make us understand more and get a better perspective of ourselves, preventive measures, and then improve. As Madam told, now fashionable mask, matching masks, so many are coming. But the thing is, they don't know how to wear it properly. Just wearing a mask is not important. They touch it always. They put it only onto the mouth. They never cover their nose. These are important points which should be made aware to population, even the so-called highly educated people also. They go on touching their mask every minute, which is wrong. And third point is about prevention. Prevention is a very important point covered by all people. So I may not be stressing on this point more, except one point. You may be going around, but you may not get the disease, but as a carrier, you carry the disease to other members of the family, mainly the senior citizens or the children or the maids, as Madam told. And this may spread the disease to other parts of the society. So prevention is always important. Then next point is about mask is a poor man's vaccine, which is called so many people, and which is a fact also, because vaccine is still a little far away. Till that time, all preventive measures, the mask being the most important one, should be followed to carry yourself and also prevent others getting infected from you. Third is, I request the officials, the negative report is not being given to the patients, sir. This is a very big problem we are facing in the apartments. We give the sample, we give a positive sample, within 1 day we may get report, but negative we don't even know even after 3-4 days. So we don't know what to do, whether the person is positive or should be isolated, or whether the person can go around being a negative. This is a request from my side, from many doctors, from many apartments. Please help us if you can. Then sanitary waste is important. As Madam told, the mask or gloves or other things should not be put either in the dry waste or in the wet waste. They should be put in the sanitary waste, especially in apartments. There is a provision for that. Individual houses, I am not too sure. So let us follow this to prevent it. Then about spitting, we made this rule 1.5 years back when we painted our apartment. Our apartment, I am proud to say, is a no spitting zone for the whole 5 acres campus. I am appreciative of my staff members, my support staff who come to apartment to work, and also the residents. We have CCTV cameras. We could not find anybody spitting recently, especially after the pandemic started. So we are 100% safe, and we want to continue this practice even for the future, which is a good practice for any society. Just I want to end with few slides which are important for the future.
Actually, Sanhaji, we are actually running short of time, so we will send out the slides. We will send out the slides to to everybody else.
Okay.
Quickly move to my last question, and then we can take question answers.
Okay.
And I think everyone has talked about this. The pandemic has changed the way people and communities live, work, and interact. And through the segment 1 and 2, we've looked at what we've learned, and we've also looked at defining what social responsibility and public health is. And I think going forward, if we have to look at making it more resilient, and taking from Dr. Sharma's quote of how would you define public health, in order to sustain what we've achieved in COVID appropriate behaviors, in order to be more kinder and inclusive, what is our way forward? What is our way forward as apartment communities, in terms of not just being within our community, but our responsibility to the wider community or the wider society? We quickly go over the questions. Who would like to start? I mean, this is an open house now. If one of you can start, and then we will pass around the mic. So then we conclude it. What are your quick takeaways to sustain and build resilience?
Mental health is very important, which we should carry, because we are putting a lot of pressures on the physical part, but we are not bothered too much about the mental health. We are putting people inside their confinements, and we don't care whether they are suffering inside, or whether they are depressed, or whether they are agitated. So we have to take a middle path. That is what we followed from the beginning, and we want to follow now also. And it may not end now, it may take 1 or 2 years more, and probably by this way the whole life may change. We don't know. This is a way for us to learn positive thinking. Always think that you will be safe. Don't go on pestering yourself or your neighbors, thinking that disease may come to me and all, which is not good. Especially when children do not have schools and all, they are always confined to their houses. They should be allowed to have freedom to some extent, but not to the extent of spoiling their life and getting infected, or things like that. Coming to the senior citizens also, we want to say that the government rule says don't go out and all. I myself am 72 years. I go to my high risk places, into the hospitals, wards, everything. As other panelists told, you keep your preventive measures, wear your protective gear always. Keep the following all the rules and regulations. So far, I have not been affected, neither me nor my husband, who is elder than me. So this is the way to go forward.
Thank you very much.
That is very important.
Thank you very much. I think an important takeaway to building resilience is definitely focus on mental health. Thank you very much. Mr. Kunal, Dr. Kunal, over to you.
So I would take that forward. As I said, that there has to be a holistic plan in place. It has to address mental health, because we saw a lot of doctors also, I know of somebody who was placed very highly in the New York Health Department who committed suicide. We will see a lot of mental illnesses, on the rise, which are even organically because of the COVID disease, plus also because of the confined spaces and, being at home and a lot of other things. So a lot of things are getting precipitated. So I would actually like to say that COVID has taught us a lot. It has taught us what wrong humanity was doing to other fellow beings. We have seen cleaner environment, a lot of changes, a lot of animals who are coming where they weren't before. So we should always keep these lessons that we are learning in mind. The resilience, also increases by being empathetic to each other. We saw the masks with respirators being done away with, because that would mean that you are safe, but the person around you will not be safe. So what we also need to understand is that these are times where the virtual experience is increasing. We'll see a lot of meetings on Teams, on Zoom platforms, even including this one. So we have to make sure that amidst all this, we do give us each of ourselves a no screen time as well. We talk to people while we are at home, people in the house, and even looking after ourselves in terms of regular immunity boosters, doing your home workouts, making sure that, your yoga, meditation, those kind of things. So I feel when you look at life in a holistic perspective, that is one of the main ways in which we all can be very strong. So beyond that, I would like to answer the question of vaccine whenever you permit me the time to do the same. There has been a question from the public.
Yeah. We quickly take the final words from everyone
Sure.
and then go back to the
Sure.
question. Okay. Dr. Mudgil, would you like to answer next? Sorry, Mr. Mudgil, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you for promoting me to a doctor. Yeah, I would say, the resilience, I would say what my co-panelists have mentioned, the small lessons, I'll say rather really very small lessons, which COVID has taught us to incorporate in our behavior. Let us incorporate them and, make them better hygiene in general, then, slightly taking care of yourself, and being considerate. I just before this meeting attended a function where the volunteers who came together to help each other, help the COVID, not each other, help the COVID patients, etc. Mental health issue, particularly there's like a group called Buddy Volunteers. They would link up with each of these home isolated patients and stay with them for 10 days. So these small, good, positive lessons, which have made an exponential difference to the spread of COVID, I would say, by containing it, they apply in general to life. And I believe that is from where the resilience will come, rather than just reacting to the crisis and then forgetting it. That's not the way. And, mental health has been mentioned. I would say that, it's just mental discipline. Being at home also one can work out. In fact, at home, I don't have a treadmill. I've been running 3 kilometers even during the lockdown at home itself. So it's just, I would say, mental discipline, and it's not easy. So, but COVID has taught us to, discover ourselves slightly more, be happy, support our families and ourselves, and the positive small lessons we have learned, inculcate them in our behavior and life, is from where the resilience will come, in my view. And on vaccine thing, I would just say that first point would be, don't panic, don't rush, allow the more vulnerable ones to have the vaccine first. The government has an absolute detailed plan about it. We will communicate, like health workers, people which are in a vulnerable group, they will get vaccinated first. For example, I myself, I will not get vaccinated immediately, because I don't belong to that group, etc. So, and there is a vaccine for everybody who needs it. So just, there's no need for any panic or rush or any such thing, is what my simple advice would be. Government is going to roll it out in a very smooth, friendly manner. The way today testing is happening in Bangalore, I would say, is the way vaccination will happen in a very organized and everywhere in Karnataka. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Pant, over to you.
Yeah. When this pandemic had started, somebody had mentioned that if we see the morning of 1st January 2021, that is something that we should be grateful for. And I think that is so true, because this pandemic has taught us, and everybody has said that already, that, the importance of small things in life, of the virtue of gratitude, of the emotion of gratitude. It is very, very important to be grateful, to be the advances in medicines, and the fact that we are able to tide over this pandemic, something which we have never seen in our entire lives. So definitely mental health and everything, exercise, but also for me personally, and I have personally experienced this, is to be on from the metaphysical perspective, to be maybe more spiritually connected, or to be connected to your inner self, for that resilience to truly come, be it meditation, be it yoga, be it any kind of, be it nature walks, being close to the nature, anything that works for you to calm yourself down, because stress itself is a huge it will definitely bring down your immunity. And we all are living in a very, very stressful life. We are living in a very, very competitive world. But I think this pandemic has kind of taught us the importance of slowing down. the importance of being in touch with yourself, the importance of paying attention to your body, to your mind, as well as to your soul. So I think all these three things, if we follow, we will be able to bring a more resilient society and hopefully a better society.
Thank you. Odette, you're next.
Yeah, in a lighter vein, COVID has made us do things we never did before. So after doing 2 months of Jhadu Pocha, I learned to bend again after 20 years, and I'm much, much fitter than I was before COVID. COVID has also given me the opportunity to bring into the national spotlight this crucial issue of spitting, Stop India Spitting, which is a huge campaign. COVID, in a lighter vein, no point wearing designer masks. As somebody said, the aim is to repel the virus, not to invite it. But the masks are a part of our life. And as we go forward, I think to take the lessons, particularly that how important the environment is. As Dr. Kunal said, so much we realized the purer air. I literally had white egrets walking down the window at the back. We never saw them earlier. So nature came so close to us. And we have to retain that by a change in our daily habits to make them more sustainable. Just because I want better vegetables, I shouldn't order everything in plastic. I have to think, so that balance of what decision is good for me, good for my community, good for the planet. And that's, I think, the best way forward, where everyone moves together in a world where we all look out for each other, including the environment as well.
Thank you very much. I think the last segment has rightly summed up what the panel hoped to achieve. And just taking in words from everybody, it is emotional gratitude, slowing down, think, make balanced decision making, be considerate. You have to inculcate mental discipline. You have to look at a holistic approach. And I think I could only sum up with one word with this whole panel, which is social empathy. The first one being individual empathy, knowing what is right for me. That means wearing mask properly and not wearing it only out of fear of fines or impositions. Second, contextual understanding what is happening, understanding why things are happening and the way to deal with it. Like somebody mentioned, sanitary ways. Odette mentioned disposing of masks, spitting, and everything else. And the lastly, social responsibility. That why are we doing it? Are we doing it for ourselves, and how do we connected to the wider community as such? And so I have to conclude, we've taken way too much time, but it was a very interesting discussion and we couldn't interrupt it. So thank you very much, everyone. I don't think so we have time for question and answers, but maybe we can all write to the Bangalore Apartment Federation and then they can pass on the questions to the panelists.